Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we're sharing a deeply personal journey about a woman's struggle to break free from a toxic family dynamic. After years of being overlooked and neglected, she finally achieves her career milestone, a promotion she worked tirelessly for. But when an unexpected call from her mother brings the past crashing back, everything she thought she had left behind resurfaces. What happens next is a shocking betrayal, forcing her to confront not just her family's cruelty but also the painful truth about what it truly means to be loved. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories and begin today's story. I never imagined that one simple post could bring my past rushing back in such a powerful way. But there I stood, staring at the storm I had unknowingly unleashed. It all started last Saturday when I shared a career milestone update. The photo I posted showed me standing beside my director, Mr. Neelan, sharing a handshake that symbolized my long-awaited promotion. The caption read, "Persistence pays off. Officially promoted to department lead." At the time, I thought it was just another post to celebrate my hard work. A simple acknowledgement of how far I had come. Little did I know, that single update would awaken ghosts I thought I had left behind long ago. My name is Emily, and I'm 26 years old. After years of struggle, I earned my promotion at Tech Solutions, moving from a junior assistant to department lead. It took me 6 relentless years of effort, countless late nights, and immeasurable patience to reach this point. It wasn't handed to me on a silver platter. This achievement, this moment, was my own, and that made it all the more special. I had fought for this promotion with every ounce of my being. But as I was basking in the joy of my success, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. I glanced at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a number I recognized, but one I hadn't seen in years. My mother's number. I answered with a hesitant voice, barely managing to say, "Hello? Emily, sweetheart," came her voice, sweet but rehearsed, just as I remembered it. "Your father and I saw your post. We're so proud of you." The words hit me like a gust of cold wind, and for a moment, I was frozen. Proud? Where was that pride when I needed it most? I gripped the edge of my desk to steady my hands and forced a smile, though it was hard to keep my composure. "Thanks," I managed to say, my voice tight. "We should celebrate," she continued, her tone shifting to one of forced enthusiasm. "Why don't you come over this weekend? We can throw a party for you. The whole family would love to see how successful you've become." The whole family. I couldn't help but feel a wave of anxiety wash over me. That meant Lauren, my younger sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I swallowed hard. "I'll think about it," I said, my throat tight with emotion. I didn't want to go. Not after everything. Not after all the years of neglect. The dismissive words. The constant comparison. But I didn't want to disappoint my mother either. I didn't want to be the one to keep the distance between us. So, I said what I always said in these situations. "Please do, darling. We've missed you so much." As soon as the call ended, I sat motionless, my phone still gripped tightly in my hand. 8 years of silence, broken by a social media post. 8 years since I had walked out of that house, promising myself I would never go back. The memories rushed back at full force, flooding my mind like a torrent. I looked down at the bracelet on my wrist. It was the same one I had worn for years. The one with the medical alert charm for my severe nut allergy. It had become a constant reminder of the neglect I had faced growing up. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. The words she had always told me. "Family is who treats you like family. Not just who shares your blood." Grandma had been my real family. The one who supported me. Who believed in me. Who helped me through college and celebrated every milestone. She was the one who showed me what love and support truly looked like. But now, here I was, staring at my phone, unsure of what to do. The thought of returning to that house, filled with people who had made me feel invisible, churned my stomach. I thought about Lauren's face. The way she had always been the center of my parents' world. I had spent my childhood in her shadow, left with hand-me-downs, forgotten school achievements, and a feeling of being second best. I remembered one particular family dinner when a relative had questioned my parents about their blatant favoritism. My mother had shrugged it off. "Emily is independent. She had said dismissively. Lauren has real talent that needs nurturing. Even as a child, I understood what that meant. Lauren was the star. I was the shadow. I thought about my 11th birthday. I had spent weeks hoping for an art set I had seen in the store. A simple kit with colored pencils and a sketchbook. Instead, I got a pack of plain pencils. You need these for school anyway, my mother had said, brushing off my disappointment. That same year, Lauren's 8th birthday had been a grand spectacle. My parents had transformed the backyard into a Disney Princess Wonderland, complete with decorations, a cake shaped like a castle, and even a hired performer dressed as Cinderella. My mother had told a relative, Lauren is just more artistic. It wasn't just the gifts or the parties. It was the way they treated me like I didn't matter. My accomplishments were always overshadowed. When I won first place in a state math competition, I came home bursting with excitement. Only to hear, that's nice, dear, but have you seen Lauren's painting? It's being displayed at school. Grandma was the only one who ever saw through it all. She would tell my mother, you're raising one child to feel entitled and the other to feel worthless. This isn't right. But my mother always brushed her off. Lauren is gifted. Emily is, well, Emily is practical. We're just being realistic about their abilities. Lauren learned to weaponize her position as the favorite. If something broke, she blamed me, and my parents would believe her without question. If she spilled juice on my homework, her crocodile tears would make me look like the villain for getting upset. Once, she even told her friends not to play with me because, in her words, I was boring. Even at school, my accomplishments were overshadowed. When I was accepted into the advanced mathematics program, my parents skipped the awards ceremony to attend Lauren's school play. We can't be everywhere, Emily, my dad had said. Lauren needs us more. I learned early on to expect nothing from them. I built a wall around my heart to protect myself from the constant feeling of being second best. By the time I graduated high school, I had learned to rely on myself. But this phone call, this invitation to celebrate my promotion, opened old wounds I had spent years trying to heal. Would it be worth going back? Would I ever truly find peace with them? Or was I just hoping for something that wasn't there? The days leading up to the party felt like a slow-motion replay of a scene I knew too well. Every step I took seemed to echo with the weight of the past. Each memory clawing at me, threatening to break through my carefully constructed walls. Grandma had always told me to trust my instincts, to listen to my heart. But every time I thought about returning to that house, I was filled with unease, an unshakable feeling of dread. Yet, despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to refuse the invitation. Part of me, the part that still wanted a semblance of family, wanted to believe that things could be different this time. That maybe, just maybe, they had changed. I didn't want to be the one who kept the distance between us. The one who walked away and never looked back. I thought it would be easy, just show up, smile, be polite, and leave. But as the day approached, I couldn't help but feel the old emotions rising within me. Would I ever truly be able to move past all of it? Saturday finally came, and I found myself standing in front of the door to the house I had once called home. It hadn't changed in the slightest. The cream-colored walls, the brass doorknob that I used to struggle to reach when I was a child. It was all the same. It was like walking into a memory that hadn't aged a day. I took a deep breath before knocking. The door swung open, and there stood my mother, wearing that same overly cheerful smile I remembered all too well. "Emily, you look amazing," she said, pulling me into a stiff hug. It felt like a performance, one I had seen so many times before. Her smile was too wide, her enthusiasm too forced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was just going through the motions. The living room was no different either. Framed pictures of Lauren's accomplishments still hung on the walls, her degree from Aspen Academy. Photos of her at art exhibitions. She was the shining star, the one who always had my parents' full attention. I felt a pang of jealousy, though I quickly tried to push it aside. It wasn't just about the pictures on the wall, it was the way my parents had treated me all these years. As though I didn't matter. As though I wasn't worth their time or energy. Lauren was sitting in my father's old armchair, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up when I walked in. Her presence, like always, was a silent reminder of how little I had meant to them. I had spent years trying to convince myself that I was stronger than this, that I was above it all. But every time I saw her, every time I was in this house, it all came flooding back. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," my mother said as we made our way to the dining room. "It's wonderful to see you doing so well." My father nodded in agreement from his seat on the couch, barely looking up from his newspaper. I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask, something I wore to protect myself. I sat down at the table, feeling the weight of their gaze on me. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could see Grandma noticing it. She hadn't been here in years, but she could always read me like a book. The meal began with small talk, but I could feel the unease in the air, thick and suffocating. My mother, ever the performer, stood up halfway through the meal to make a speech. "We're here to celebrate Emily's incredible achievement," she began, smiling broadly. "Her promotion to department lead is proof that hard work pays off." I nodded politely, but something in her tone made my skin crawl. I should have known there was more to come. "And speaking of success," she continued, her voice brightening, "we'd like to talk about Lauren. She's been working on expanding her art career. And with your new position, Emily, you could help her get a role at your company. Family supports family, right?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on me, waiting for my response. My heart was pounding in my chest as I fought to keep my composure. I forced a smile, though it felt tight on my face. "Actually, I don't make hiring decisions," I said, my voice steady. "That's not part of my role." My mother's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "But surely, with your influence, you could help her," she insisted. I stood up abruptly, feeling the tension crack like a whip. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Can I speak with you in private? In the kitchen?" The moment I spoke those words, everything shifted. The tension that had been building finally erupted. I knew this wasn't just about the promotion anymore. It was about everything I had endured over the years. My mother's obsession with Lauren, the constant undermining of my achievements, the way they had made me feel invisible. It all came crashing down in that moment. In the kitchen, my mother snapped, "Don't be selfish, Emily. Lauren needs this opportunity." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Selfish?" I repeated, my voice breaking. After 8 years of silence. "You reach out because you want something from me. And I'm the selfish one?" My father's voice was low and cold. "We've given Lauren every advantage. We've invested everything in her future. The least you can do is help your sister now that you're in a position to do so." I couldn't hold back anymore. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. I returned to the dining room, my emotions a whirlwind, and tried to compose myself. But as the main course was served, I felt a growing unease. Something wasn't right. As the dinner continued, I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me, each moment stretching out longer than the last. I forced myself to eat, but the food didn't taste right. My thoughts were racing, spinning in every direction, trying to find a way out of this suffocating atmosphere. Grandma's warm presence was the only thing that kept me grounded, though I could see the concern in her eyes. She knew, just as I did, that something was wrong, but neither of us could quite put our finger on it. The conversation shifted again, this time toward more trivial matters. My mother's voice was bright and insistent as she tried to make small talk. But I could hardly focus on her words. All I could think about was the tension that hung thick in the air between us. How easy it had been for them to dismiss me. How my accomplishments had always been overshadowed by Lauren. How even now, at this celebration of my hard work, they couldn't see me for who I truly was. I glanced down at my plate and suddenly realized something odd. The sauce on the chicken had a distinct nutty flavor. My heart skipped a beat as panic gripped me. My throat tightened instantly, and the familiar, suffocating feeling of an allergic reaction began to set in. I felt the cold sweat on my skin as my vision blurred. I knew immediately what had happened. They had done it again. "Peanuts," I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. I looked around, desperately searching for my purse, my EpiPen, but my hands were shaking so violently, I could hardly hold anything steady. In that moment, Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Chairs scraped loudly as everyone around me stood up in alarm. My grandmother's voice cut through the panic. Sharp and commanding. "Someone call 911. Her hand gripped mine, her voice trembling but strong. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she urged, trying to steady me as my body began to shut down. The room spun. The noise blurred into a distant hum. And then everything went dark. I woke up to the steady beeping of machines. The sterile scent of a hospital room filling my senses. My throat burned, and my body felt heavy, like I had just fought a battle and lost. Blinking against the harsh light, I saw my grandmother sitting beside me, her face etched with worry. When she saw my eyes open, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank God," she whispered, leaning in closer. "You scared us, Emily." The doctor's voice echoed in my mind, though I could barely remember the details. He had told me it was one of the worst reactions they had ever seen. That I had come dangerously close to losing my life. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as little more than a hoarse whisper. "Grandma," I croaked, struggling to make sense of everything that had just happened. The fear, the confusion, the overwhelming sense of betrayal. But my grandmother only shook her head gently, her expression darkening as she nodded. "We'll talk about it later, Emily. Just rest now." Before I could respond, the door to the room opened, and Aunt Linda walked in. Sophie, my cousin. Beside her, Sophie was holding her phone tightly in her hands, her face pale with shock. Without saying a word, she handed me her phone. "Emily," she said softly, her voice shaky, "there's something you need to see." I took the phone, my hands still unsteady. The video was clear. After I had left the room with my parents, Lauren had walked over to my plate. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small jar, and stirred something into my food. It wasn't subtle, it was deliberate. She then returned to her seat, the smug smile on her face unmistakable. "Peanut butter," Aunt Linda said coldly, her voice tight with fury. She knew exactly what she was doing. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The smirk on Lauren's face. The way she casually poisoned me. Knowing full well the consequences of my allergy, it wasn't a mistake. It was planned. My sister had tried to kill me. I couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of it all was too much to bear. Grandma's voice cracked as she spoke softly, her heartbreak evident. "She could have killed you, Emily." I could barely process the words. My whole life, my parents had let Lauren get away with everything. They had always believed her, always treated her like the golden child, while I was left to fight for scraps. And now, she had tried to take my life. All for a laugh. All for her own sick amusement. I was beyond angry. The mix of disbelief, rage, and sadness churned within me, threatening to tear me apart. But there was no turning back now. This wasn't just a mistake, this was an act of malice. I left the hospital against the doctor's advice. Sophie's words about the video weighed heavily on me as I drove home. My hands shaking on the steering wheel. I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't nearly died at the hands of my own sister. When I got to my parents' house, I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. I walked in without hesitation, my heart pounding in my chest. The house was eerily quiet. My parents were sitting in the living room, as if nothing had happened. Lauren was there too, scrolling through her phone. I knew, as soon as I walked in, that they were pretending nothing was wrong. They weren't going to acknowledge what had just occurred. They weren't going to admit the truth. I approached them, my voice steady despite the fury inside me. "I know what you did," I said, holding up the phone. "I have proof." I pressed play on the video, and the room fell silent as Lauren's actions played out for everyone to see. Her smirk, the peanut butter, the deliberate stirring, it was all there, in plain sight. Lauren's face turned pale, but she didn't react the way I expected. Instead, she laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It was just a prank." A prank. I could barely believe what I was hearing. I felt the anger rise in my chest, threatening to spill over. "A prank?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I could have died. Lauren, you knew I was allergic." My mother waved her hand dismissively. You're being dramatic. Lauren was just having a little fun. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Fun? I almost died because of her. And this is fun to you? I turned to my father, hoping for some semblance of reason. But his voice was cold. His words cutting deep. Listen carefully, Emily. If you even think about going to the police with this, you're no longer our daughter. We'll disown you completely. Their words were like a final blow. This wasn't just about the poisoning. It was about everything, their neglect, their favoritism, their complete lack of empathy. In that moment, I realized something I had known deep down for years. These people were not my family. They never had been. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the house. My hands steady now, but my heart heavy with the weight of the truth. I left my parents' house with a sense of finality I hadn't expected. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, the weight of everything lifted from my shoulders. But there was still a lingering ache in my heart. For so long, I had tried to fit into a family that never truly accepted me. A family that showed me their love only when it suited them. Now, I was free. Free from the burden of seeking their approval. Free from the toxic bonds that had held me back for so long. I took a deep breath and made my way back home, where I could breathe without feeling suffocated by the expectations of others. I was finally on my own. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the space to truly grow. The support I had found in my grandmother, in friends, and even distant relatives, was more than enough to replace the hollow love I had once yearned for from my parents. The video I posted spread like wildfire, with people I hadn't spoken to in years reaching out to express their outrage and support. The flood of messages reminded me that family isn't about blood, it's about the people who stand by you, who lift you up, who truly care about your well-being. In the weeks that followed, I realized that the true meaning of family had nothing to do with shared DNA. It was about the people who choose you, the ones who stand with you through thick and thin. My grandmother's unwavering support was a beacon of light in the darkness. And I knew that I had finally found my real family. If you've ever been in a toxic relationship, remember that it's okay to walk away. Sometimes, the hardest step is the most freeing one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with more life stories.